If this does end up as a YouTube video, hi, Jake here. I'm live on YouTube, which is different, and we're just doing a Q&A about all the Bungie Destiny stuff recently. You'd have to be living under a rock to not know about what's been happening recently. On Monday, we got news that over 8% of Bungie's employees got laid off. Tons of people that we know that are community managers that we've heard of were laid off very surprisingly and unexpectedly. News since then is leaked out about the methods by which it was done, kind of shady methods where some of it was done for like stock options reasons to like get them off before their stock options grew and get them off the insurances before a new month began, all kinds of really gross, seedy stuff. And the community's been frustrated. We also got word that Final Shape is going to be pushed back from what was originally going to be February 27th into June. And today, Thursday, we were really hoping for confirmation on that. Thursday is Twid Day, it's TWAB Day. It's the day for them to let us know what's going on in the Destiny world, the Bungie world, and their time to kind of clarify things for us. Unfortunately, what we were all really desperately hoping for, they did kind of the opposite of. They gave us an extremely quick sort of, to summarize, like, hey, this week's been hard, but trust us, bro, Final Shape will be great. Don't worry about it. They didn't confirm or deny about Final Shape being pushed back. They didn't really give us any details that we were looking for. And realistically, as a Destiny and a Bungie fan, it was pretty frustrating. The whole past few days has been frustrating, but hoping for some transparency today and getting quite literally the opposite, getting a little slap in the face of like, hey, we're not going to really tell you anything at all, except for like, trust us, Final Shape will be great, which how can we trust them right now, especially with everything going on? So it felt like a little bit of a slap in the face. They also signed it, the dev team, which is what, hundreds of people? It didn't sound like that actually came from somebody from the dev team. That sounded like someone who was higher up, and the higher ups are getting so much heat right now, they probably signed it as the dev team. So to just add another wrench of making it more difficult to trust them and find them credible. What I was hoping to do is just kind of have a Q&A and read chat, have y'all give me some ideas of questions you might have, and just sort of talk through things. The future of Destiny freaks me out. I'm fearful. The absolute legend, who I don't know by name perfectly, so I'm not going to try to guess it, but Salvatore, maybe I will try to guess it, who's made music for Bungie games since 1997, was let go, and it was confirmed that he already has finished the music for Final Shape. Therefore, if Bungie is letting this individual go, that's sort of their way of saying they're done with big DLCs. They've gotten their music for the big DLC for Final Shape. They don't need him anymore, and as awful and gross as this is, they just cut him. I think it's pretty much undisputed that that dude is a legend in terms of the music he makes. So they wouldn't cut him because of what he's been making or creating. It'd be because of a lack of need for him. So I feel like that's a really clear demonstration of like, they're not planning on doing anything big after Final Shape. That's the business, right? But if they were going to be doing a bunch of episodes and a bunch of big DLCs and things that were important enough to have their own music, they wouldn't have cut the man. They cut the man. What does that tell you about the future of the game? They got their Final Shape music and now they're done with him. Think about it. I think it's a really, really, really bad example of, or demonstration for us, bad news demonstration of what it might mean for the future of the game. It's also just bad. It's just rough. I feel bad for the guy. There is no future. We just have to enjoy the ride. We've been told from the beginning that Destiny is a 10-year game, right? For those who weren't here originally, we were pretty much told immediately Destiny was a 10-year plan. They made Destiny 1 for 3 years. We're coming up on year 7 now of Destiny 2. So we're a year away from the end of our 10-year stretch. September 2014 to September 2024 would be those 10 years. And I think Bungie's really just planning on that being the case. We've got our big final DLC coming in 2024. I believe they're going to give us episodes, which are going to be like sort of less exciting seasons until there aren't enough people interested in Destiny for it to be worth it for them to keep producing. And a lot of people wonder like, why? Destiny's such a big moneymaker for them. Why? I don't have the answer for why. If this is the case, if they do give up on Destiny and they're just going to bleed out episodes until people are sort of over, I don't have the answer for why. I can guess. I do think that their game is vastly too large now, and every time they try to fix one little tiny piece of their game, they break 18 other things and the servers go offline for freaking hours, right? It's such a vastly big, complicated game now that it's impossible for them to add to it or fix it without breaking other things. So they need to find a way to get out of that. I would hope and think maybe a new Destiny would have made sense for them, but I think most of us are well past the place of thinking that that's in our future. All good things must come to an end, and yeah, if that's the case, that's the case, but we can probably all agree we would hope for a really exciting, climactic, feels good ending rather than everyone gets laid off and Bungie delays things and doesn't tell us things and we have this really unsatisfying conclusion. Nobody wants that. Nobody who's a fan of this game, nobody at Bungie, nobody wants a 10-year game to have a really lame, sad conclusion. Even if all good things must come to an end, you would hope it would come to an end with a bang and have it be this big, epic conclusion. What is your biggest concern with Trials now? Well, my biggest concern with Trials has always been population. The better the population for Trials of Osiris, the more successful the playlist and the more enjoyable the playlist. When a big DLC comes out, you have a big population, and then each week after the big DLC, the population drops little by little by little by little by little. Of course, there's weeks where it goes up if like a new season comes out or a weapon people really want is the Adept. But for the most part, the trend is the downward trend after each big DLC. The concern is that there's only one big DLC coming out in the future of Destiny. We're only going to have one more uptick in the player population. Other than that, it's going to be only down, and that means sweatier matches, laggier matches, matches against the same teams, easier to stream snipe, so many negatives. And also, if it does get pushed back 4 months, the final shape that is, that just means that the 4 months between February and June, February 27th and June, are going to be detrimental to the playlist. There's going to be not very many people playing. So this news just makes me think Trials will be even worse than it already is in the coming months, especially between February and June. And then if it's only one ever big DLC again, I don't see Trials lasting for more than maybe 6 or so months after that big DLC. I don't see any reason why it would be a populated playlist at that point. What do you think about Checkmate Trials? Would that be a good idea? I certainly think it'd be a good experiment. I don't know why they wouldn't try it. They've gotten so much positive feedback about Checkmate that I do think adding it in for a Trials lab, as they've done with so many things, would be a really good idea, and I assume they will do that at some point. I have no idea when, and they haven't said anything that makes me sure of that, but Checkmate's been so popular, I have to feel pretty confident they'll try it out as a lab at some point. Do you think removing skill base from the game would help? I have a hard time answering that because there's so many different opinions. For me personally, yes, I would enjoy the game more. For every individual, it just depends. What do you think about the marathon and the news related to marathons? This is a good question because it's related to the last few days. We got news on Wednesday that basically Bungie had shown a marathon to a bunch of Tarkov players. And keep in mind, an extraction looter, shooter, whatever it's called, Tarkov is that, marathon is gonna be that. So there's a reason why Tarkov players make sense. And apparently the Tarkov players unanimously decided they didn't really like it. The reason I don't think this is that big of news is a few reasons. One is Bungie games are nothing like Tarkov. I get that looter, shooter, extraction, whatever, they're supposed to be similar, but from everybody who's played Tarkov and has talked to me, I don't see Bungie's games being related to Tarkov outside of it just being an extraction, looter, shooter, whatever. I don't think that it's that closely tied, and therefore I don't think that their opinions are that important, especially when you consider that this is something that happened a while ago, and we're still at this point in time over a year from marathons. So what? When they were shown this, they were a year and a half out from the release of Marathon, still crazy amounts of time to work on it. I don't think that news was as devastating as a lot of people think, and I could be wrong. That's just my opinion. It felt like there were people looking for drama because all the stuff around Bungie is everybody's just wanting to find drama, and that felt like another point of like, let's just find some drama. Will I play Marathon? I'm absolutely going to try Marathon. I never really had any intentions of doing what I've done in Destiny. I knew I was going to try Destiny back in 2014. I had no idea it was going to turn into this 10-year journey that I was just obsessed with. I have no idea with Marathon. I'm going to try it. I don't know if it's going to be a 3-day thing and I'm like, I don't really like this. Or if it's going to be a 3-week thing and I'm like, I don't really like this. Or if it's going to be a freaking 10-year thing that I just get obsessed with. There's no way for me to know until we actually see it, play it, and really get involved in it. But I am planning on making content around Marathon and at least giving it a shot. As a fellow D1 player, are you going to continue to support a company who doesn't seem to care about their players or workers? I love this franchise, but I think I'm done. What are your thoughts? That's an interesting question for sure. And maybe I have a really toxic mentality around this, but I have a hard time imagining myself, my one person, having enough of an impact for it to really matter too much. It's less that I want to support Bungie and therefore buy the final shape, and it's more that I personally, selfishly want to see this big final conclusion DLC. And I'm frustrated by everything that's going on at Bungie, and I'm frustrated by their way of communicating it with their fan base, and I just feel very, very disconnected from the company that I've been such a big fan of since Halo 2. But I don't want to refund. I don't want to turn away. I want to see the end of this 10-year journey that I believe the final shape is sort of gonna fill the role of. Do you still feel motivated to play Destiny, even with the climate surrounding the company as of late? Motivated? That's maybe a hard word for me to sell. The motivation for me playing Destiny has nothing to do with Bungie, and realistically very little to do with Destiny. It has a lot to do with what I've built my career around. And before you think that means just financially, that means the carrot system I have on Twitch too, where people have been saving up carrots to win an auction to go flawless with me. And whether it's with me in gold or me into Fizzle or me in Fancy or me in Nighthawk or Zorbik or whoever you might name, there's a lot of people, I mean, lots of people who've been saving up carrots for the hopeful day that they can win that auction, or even just gamble in a raffle and win that raffle to have this flawless journey with me. I do not want to ever have an abrupt end to that. I feel like it's my duty to everybody who's watched my stream and decided to save up carrots to give everybody that chance of doing that, or at least them having a long enough heads up that it might be coming to an end. Instead of me just being like, abrupt, Trials is done, Bungie sucks, and I'm moving on. I'd rather we play Final Shape, and I sort of look down the road and realize we maybe only have Trials for like 4 months, and then I can give that warning of like, hey friends, the next 4 months, that's your last time to win auctions and raffles, so make sure you get it. You know what I mean? So that's my motivation. It's getting as many people flawless as possible. It's making it so I didn't give a false promise when people were saving carrots. I don't want people to be saving for years and then me just be like, haha, LOL, Bungie sucks, I'm done. Saying they don't care about their workers is very over the top. Layoffs happen literally every day, and nothing they did is out of the ordinary. I'm not totally sure I agree with you there. I do agree that Bungie is a business. A lot of people seem to forget that. They have to make money. They have to have a profit. And apparently they were like 45% lower than their projections, which, why were your projections so insanely high? Like, what were you thinking? But I still do think that there is a better way that they could have gone about all of this. They could have given more heads up to the people they were laying off and prepare them instead of what sounded like a complete blindside to everybody. They could have done a good job at communicating with their audience, that's us, their player base, their community after the fact. Maybe talk about some of the things that are going on behind the scenes. Transparency's always been something that everybody has asked for from Bungie. They've had eras in their 9 years as a Destiny game, as a Destiny maker, where they've been really good about transparency. They've had eras where they're really terrible with it. To me, it feels like everything about how they've managed this from the consumer side has been terrible. Especially when you have a Twitter account and you can see so many of the Bungie employees and their very, very uncensored thoughts on the subject. It seems like they did a horrifically bad job of navigating all this. Yes, they are indeed a company. They need profits. I get it. It just doesn't seem like they did it in a good way. And they're not doing a good job in the 4 days since of making the community feel better about it or more secure about it. Each passing day where they basically say nothing and don't do anything to fix it just feels like they're even further and further and further disconnected with us. Keep in mind, I've never owned some big company with a bunch of employees. I don't really know the ins and outs of how to navigate it. And I think myself, as well as a lot of people, probably judge too harshly, as we know nothing about how that actually all works. However, I'm still totally entitled to how I feel about everything. That's how I, and I think tons of people from the Destiny community, feel about it. And I stand by it. What do you think at this point Bungie could do to try to fix their relationship and trust with their community? What sort of thing could they do that would even satisfy you? Really good question, because I think a lot of people will never really forgive Bungie. I don't know what to attribute that to. I think that the internet in general, and I've experienced this as a streamer, who will have things that I said once upon a time from 7 years ago called back in anytime anything about me comes up. I think people on the internet have a really hard time of forgiving. There's a lot of focus. This is unfortunate, but it's true. There's a lot of focus around negativity. Negativity gets more eyes and more attention. Positive things are very often overshadowed by the negative and the bad. I think a lot of people in this community, as a result of everything that's happened the last few days, will never fully trust Bungie again and will never really feel good about Bungie again. I'm a little bit different. I feel like I am good at forgiveness. It's not always something I've been good at, but I've practiced it a lot. What can they specifically do for me to feel good about the company again and really trust them again? That's a really hard answer to come up with. I can't think of one overarching, like, Bungie does this and I now love them. I think it's a bunch of little steps that they need to take to continue to demonstrate to us that they actually have their community's best interest at heart, that they actually are planning on making good content and keeping transparent about what that content will look like and what the future of Destiny will look like. Instead of closing doors and having it so we're just guessing as to what's going on in the company, the only way that I'll really feel good about them going forward is if they open those doors again. Let us see in, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it doesn't feel good, let us see in what's happening, why is it happening, what's the future look like, what are you planning and why. Let's actually have open dialogue again so we can begin to build that trust back. What happened today with their posts of basically just being like, this week sucked, but the future's gonna be good, bye, was the opposite of that. It was that feeling again of what they used to be like with the closed door, we don't say anything to you, we're above you, Destiny community, we're up here, you're down here, and that's how it's gonna be. If that's how it's gonna be, they're not getting my trust or my respect back. If they open back up that door, little by little, I think they probably can for me, but maybe not for anyone else or everyone else. I've seen some people saying we need to start spending more so that layoffs won't happen or that it's our fault for allowing this to happen. Do you have any thoughts on that? I have made jokes on Twitter about how we didn't buy enough silver. Darn, it's our fault. Realistically, it is absolutely never our fault as the players and the consumers. It is 100% a issue within the company themselves. There should be none of us who feel pressure that we need to buy DLCs, that we need to buy silver, or things will just get worse. You play the game you want to play. If you want that ornament, you buy that ornament. But none of us should feel any pressure to be financially supporting Bungie to try to prevent layoffs. It is a mismanagement of projections, most likely, and who knows what else inside the company that's led to this happening. It's not the gamers and the consumers' fault. If you were Bungie, how would you have handled layoffs differently? I just was discussing that. I have no idea. I've never worked within a company. I've never fired or laid anybody off. So it's really hard for me to know. I do know that seeing the frustration from all their employees on Twitter, they didn't do a good job of it. How would I have done it? I have no idea. I feel like each person is such a case-by-case scenario that's way too complicated of a question for me to even take a guess at. If Bungie called a summit with a bunch of content creators and community members to discuss things, do you think you could go in with a positive mindset? Positive mindset? That's a unique concept. Open mindset, yes. I could certainly go in with an open mindset, willing to learn, willing to listen, I'm willing to come up with questions based off of whatever we're discussing. I don't think I would want to go in with a positive attitude no matter what. The idea behind summits shouldn't be positivity. It should be grounded, realistic feedback and conversation. So if I were invited to a summit, yes, I genuinely believe I could go in with an open mindset, ready to discuss things. But it wouldn't be falsely positive. Genuine question, how do you think if your limited knowledge of the game / dev PR, blah, blah, they could have cut costs and extended in a way you would have been okay with? I don't think I can answer these questions. I hope that there are not other Destiny content creators who even tried to answer these questions. We know nothing about the budgets in Bungie. We know nothing about the costs in Bungie. We know nothing about the dev work in Bungie. We're just closing our eyes, spinning in circles, and throwing darts if we try to answer questions like that. It's just unethical. I have no idea. And I can't try to answer that question without just being a jackass. I'm sorry. It's called a super chat. Unfortunately, many of your peers are making all kinds of wild claims. That sucks. That sucks. They shouldn't be doing that. We, including you, not just content creators, but the people who are also just the gamers and players and the people that make up the vast majority of the community. We should not be pretending to be experts on the subject. And it happens so often, especially on Twitter, where people just assume or pretend to know everything. They're the experts in what they say and what they think goes. And like, we're allowed to have opinions and we're allowed to feel frustration. I'd be surprised if you're a Destiny player and you're not frustrated this week. But I don't think it's fair for us to be acting like we understand everything and know exactly how we should have managed or they should have managed. Like, it doesn't feel right. What are your thoughts on the history of we're listening? Do you think Bungie, for the most part, actually listens to player feedback? Xavier, I do think Bungie listens to player feedback. However, I think that feedback is a lot less agreed upon than you may think. Very often on Twitter or on Twitch, people share the same opinions. You've got the very dedicated player base posting their opinions on Twitter, or the very dedicated player base being streamers on Twitch and YouTube. So you often think everybody feels the same way. How could Bungie not be listening to this? But very often the less super player base, the more casual player base, doesn't agree with a lot of the takes that the more super player base has. I think Bungie does their best to navigate managing all the different feedback they get. And I know specifically some of my ideas directly have been implemented into the game. Ideas that I gained either just from myself or from reading YouTube and Twitch and kind of coming up with what I feel like would be a good idea. I know they listen. I know it at times feels like they don't listen. And I do think that we're maybe seeing this last week a issue of maybe some of the people that were working on the game were listening, while some of the higher ups didn't let them go forward with ideas. That's a narrative I have seen on Twitter in the last few days with all this new Bungie news, is that there were times where it sounded like some of these devs had things they really wanted to do that they thought would really fix the game or make the game better, that they had learned from their feedback from their player base, and that the higher ups were like, nah, you can't do that. Execs were like, no, while the devs were like, please. Now, I don't know exactly where I heard that from, and I don't know how credible that is, but it is a narrative that it's been passed along Twitter and had many, many eyes on it. So I think it probably is credible. I think it was maybe Paul Tassi who tweeted it out. So yeah, maybe the Bungie devs listen, but the Bungie execs don't want to. If their belief is that Final Shape was just okay and not great, how long do you think they will actually need to make that change to make it so it's great? I also, again, I just don't know, NYC Monster. I would want to believe that when they give us a date, February 27th, and it's 6 months out, that they have the resources and the power to bring us that big DLC on the day that they told us. But this would be like the 4th time in the last 7 years that they've had to delay a DLC or something like that. They've done it pretty frequently. June, 4 extra months, that's literally double the time. Between now and February 27th, between February 27th and June, that's double the time. I would want to believe that that's enough time for them to produce a really, really good DLC for us, but I would just be guessing there. Will there be a Destiny 3? I really don't think so. I do think it would have been a decent idea for them, but I do not think it will happen at this point. Jay, do you think adding abilities and supers and whatnot would be better for the consumer side of Destiny funding, or would it be too game breaking? I think Destiny is too big. We kind of touched on it already. They fix an SMG and it breaks the game for 4 hours. I really believe that Destiny has reached its final shape in this coming year, and that them trying to do crazy things like adding a whole new subclass and super and whatnot is just going to further break the game. It's already so big and so complicated. I don't think they can realistically do that. That's why they've been vaulting like entire locations and strikes and things, because they can't keep up. They can't have it be filled with this much stuff. They have to keep limiting it. Friends, I'm gonna head out. It's been an hour. I just wanted to chat. I just wanted to rant. I just wanted to vent. I hope it wasn't lame. I hope you didn't have questions that didn't get unnoticed or unanswered. I feel like we touched on everything I have any knowledge about and any opinions about. So I don't know what sitting here and just kind of like shooting the shit about stuff we've already talked about will do for anybody. I don't really see any upside. Later, Jungle Squad. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Goodbye, friends.